In today's video, we will explain why Europe does not have any mega-tall skyscrapers. While continents like Asia are home to some of the tallest skyscrapers in the world, Europe seems to be lacking. And even though North America does not have nearly as many super tall buildings as Asia, it still has way more towers than Europe. So, why is this the case? Is Europe expecting some new mega-tall skyscrapers sometime in the near future? Before we go on, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Top Luxury. By the time skyscrapers were being built in places like Chicago and New York City in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, most European cities were already established. They wanted to preserve their historical structures since old architecture was a big part of the overall culture. When North America became a more dominating international force, tensions between them and Europe quickly rose. Americans perceived European society as outdated, while Europeans believed that Americans were throwing away traditional values. This meant that Europe wanted to avoid succumbing to American influences, so they refused to invest in new skyscrapers because North America was. Once the Second World War ended in September of 1954, many of Europe's most cherished historical buildings were completely destroyed. The entire continent was tasked with reconstructing cities from scratch, but they did not want to modernize their structures. Instead, Europeans hoped to imitate the same architectural designs that defined the continent before the war. During that time, other continents, such as North America, constructed buildings that were higher than ever before. Europeans, however, were just trying to rebuild their cities. Because the overall population in Europe was lower, there was little demand for the floor area. Since this is what drives the construction of skyscrapers, buildings typically were not planned to be as high as in America at the time. Instead, the majority of new buildings were constructed to be low-rise ones, similar to the pre-war era. Skyscraper known as the Torre Juroski was built at 155 meters or 508 feet in the sky. Since it was technically outside of the area which the band covers, it was allowed to be constructed despite still being in the city of Rome, which means they're investing money into their botanical gardens to produce clean air and accessible cycling routes to promote forms of pollution-free transportation. The eco-friendly European countries have noticed that after implementing these types of changes, their citizens have higher reports of happiness and general well-being. Asia and North America, on the other hand, are continuing to plan new residential skyscrapers, including the MegaTall Merdeka Tower in Kuala Lumpur. With the coronavirus pandemic still affecting the entire globe, construction for many MegaTall skyscrapers around the world has been put to a halt. The economic consequences have hit everyone, which means that it's simply not feasible to plan another tall tower right now for many countries. Plus, it has become significantly harder for architects to obtain permission for their future projects in current circumstances. That means the construction of any super tall buildings will probably continue to be delayed, at least for the time being. Even some countries in Asia, a place that has always been trying to build higher and higher skyscrapers, have legalized restrictions on the height of future towers. China has created a ban on buildings taller than 500 meters or 1,640 feet in height, in hopes of preserving the current culture of the country. These types of rules are even more strict in places such as Bali, Indonesia. It is pretty unlikely that Europe will promote a ban that extreme, but the era of skyscrapers across the world is changing nonetheless. In the past, major corporations had their headquarters in skyscrapers. They often wanted to make a bold statement to show their success and power, and a super tall building was always considered to be the perfect way to do